this phrase like work-life balance and why you'd be an entrepreneur, because actually I don't think being an entrepreneur gives you a better work-life balance. And I think actually the reason I'm saying that is because I think work-life balance is a myth and it doesn't exist.
Oh,
I know.
controversial.
I didn't tell you that before we recorded. But I think actually what I now like the term work-life energy. Entrepreneurship, Dave. Are we entrepreneurs? That is what we're gonna see. Do you think yourself as an entrepreneur?
See, we were mulling this over before recording and had to quickly hit record because I don't. But yet I've had so many people say that you're entrepreneurial, and I'm like, no, I almost feel that what I'm doing is a necessity given the state of the NHS as it is, which is probably a slightly controversial position. For those who haven't watched any of our videos before, I'm a 6-session partner up in the northeast of England. I also work 2 sessions with Hull York Medical School. You know, I've got a family of 3 who I want to privately educate, and you get to this position from a financial position where you're going, right, GP partnership isn't earning as much as say it was 10, 20 years ago. And I'm not bitter about that. It's just a statement of fact as far as I see it. I want to educate my kids in that way. Everyone's entitled to their own decision. And then you sort of look at your options, really. I mean, I could up my sessions, but I've tried to do 7 sessions, sometimes even 8 sessions a week, and it's exhausting. And then I realised that I'm just going to burn out in months, years, and probably 6, pushing 7 is probably about my limit clinically. And then you look at other options. So whether do you work out of hours, medical examining, but they don't pay nearly as well as for the effort that you need to put in, you end up in the same trap. And so you end up like, what are your options? And you start Googling side hustles and whatever you want to call it and playing around on YouTube, and you think, well, could I take this seriously? And then, as they say, it's sort of, you're in this weird position where in terms of finances, the amount of time that I spend on this channel, I'm probably at this moment in time, if I'd invested the same amount of time doing an extra session, I'll probably be up here, but like, because of the channel, I'm probably in minus figures, but in my head, and sort of when we've chat about our plans, I sort of see us going a bit like that, maybe even steeper. I don't consider myself entrepreneurial. I sort of consider myself, unfortunately, perhaps a bit forced into it. Sorry, it's rather somber. I'm normally the upbeat one. No. So
it's not something that's unheard of. It's certainly something that I'm speaking to lots of other GP and other medical colleagues. This is not an unrealistic thing. This is what people are experiencing quite a lot. I think there's an element of the sort of the trap of the cell of work-life balance of GP that I think is definitely something that until you become a GP you think is lovely, and then you realise what the actual job is and how much people are actually working, how difficult it is, and like I say, burnout is a real thing. I very much can go on.
No, I think you're right. I think people go into general practice thinking like the work-life balance is easy and really easy to maintain. And it's probably why the number of partners is not as strong as it was, because that's where there's a huge amount of hidden work that isn't advertised, that when I'm not being rude to registrars or trainees, like they are heavily protected from, and it's only when they hit salaried partners that they suddenly get, and I've seen it in your first 5 GPs who suddenly get like a steam train rolling over them saying like, where's all this work come from? And you're like, well, and it's, in my opinion, it's the wrong way around. And actually looking at my wife's workload, I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, she has not got an easy workload, but in terms of work-life balance at times, I think she's got it better than me, or she's sussed it out a lot better than I have.
So on the flip side, let's raise the energy level a little bit. I very much consider myself entrepreneurial, and I probably have been considered that in the last, easily the last 5 years, but I've definitely been doing entrepreneurial stuff alongside clinical medicine for the last 10 plus years, probably even longer. And that has come from a range of different projects and different things. And I'm sure we can do a separate thing on all of those things, but the abridged version will be, doing property investment, setting up limited companies, setting up private practice. So I'm in my private clinic today, setting up online educational platforms like Doc Support with your good self, and various other things that along the way didn't quite work out. But that's the point, right? Being an entrepreneur is you try stuff and test stuff, and some things stick and some things don't. I've probably come a little bit more sort of full circle on the idea, because I now work 5 clinical sessions equivalent a week. It's actually probably 4 in terms of hours, 16 hours, plus or minus a GP out of hours shift for the NHS. And the rest of the time I spend doing entrepreneurial stuff, i.e. doc sport stuff or property stuff or investment stuff. Small family, I've got 2 small kids.
Yep, absolutely.
I literally spend more time working now than I ever have. This phrase like work-life balance and why you'd be an entrepreneur, because actually I don't think being an entrepreneur gives you a better work-life balance. And I think actually the reason I'm saying that is because I think work-life balance is a myth and it doesn't exist.
Oh,
I know.
controversial.
I didn't tell you that before we recorded. But I think actually what I now like the term work-life energy. And I think you'll agree with me on this.
Yes, absolutely.
That I now have far more energy to do my clinical work, to do my other side hustles, entrepreneurial businesses, work, whatever you want to call it. I have far more energy to do all of those things and do energy for my kids and my family and all my other things that I want to do in life. And actually, because even though I'm working technically probably harder than I ever did when I was working even in a full-time education in medical training, or as an NHS GP, I genuinely have far more energy to do it, and I'm much happier doing it, which means I'm much less likely to burn out and be coming unstuck. And on the plus side, I get to create stuff, which is something that I never get to do in clinical practice. There's nothing creative about. There's very much a reactive role. Yes. And you can talk about preventative things, of course.
Yeah.
But you're still kind of working in a very reactive space. Whereas actually, when you start getting the entrepreneurial space, whatever it is, be it creating content on YouTube, be it creating businesses, these kind of things, they're far more sort of interesting, and you've got other avenues that you can go down, and it just triggers different bits of your brain to help you kind of be happy about doing stuff. And I think that's great. That's why I like being an entrepreneur. That's what I think it is. Work-life energy. There you go.
Work-life energy. I must have to admit to that, because if you looked at work-life balance, the amount that I'm working is stupid. But on the flip, it's like, I'm just the same with that. Is like the amount of energy that I'll get up early. Like the kids are up early, but I will happily find myself waking up naturally about an hour before they do, just to be like, I'll either edit a video or, when we were getting the course out, I was getting up early to get that edited, get it up and get it out, and just putting those, and the amount of energy. I did it yesterday. So I had an admin session with at work, which was brilliant. I got to catch up on some paperwork, but found that incredibly dull. And then I was like, right, I'm going to quickly shoot a video, an idea that I had about a really hot topic that I knew was affecting a lot of GPs. I managed to shoot, edit, get it out within the space of about half an hour. And then I was like, right, back on with your work and sort of crack on with it that way. But as you say, the energy levels, my wife finds it annoying. So for those watching, me and Matt do chat on the phone a lot, and she'll often roll her eyes at me when I come in bouncing in, and she's like, Dave, have you just had a Matt chat? And I'm like, yeah, I've just had a Matt chat. We've got this idea now. So it's sort of like, I completely agree with you on, and I think that's why I continue. Because you look at, like, if I plotted, so take YouTube, for example, if I plotted the hours I've spent shooting, editing, everything but promoting behind it, per video, there is, per 10-minute video, there's probably at least a good 2-3 hours that have gone into it behind the scenes, if not more. But it's been awesome. And you can sort of see the progression. And I completely agree. There is very little in my job that's creative, if anything at all. And it's really frustrating at times, because you just I don't have any creative outlet. It's probably why I'm mucked about as our social media side, because that allows you a bit of creativity to sort of engage with your patients or audience. But then it's still, but nothing's more fulfilling than this. It's so much fun.
And the thing is I like the balance, right? I actually
absolutely.
So I in my timeline messing around as an entrepreneur and in training and various different things, I actually resigned from ST6 as an ENT trainee, and I
That's
worked
a big decision.
Yeah, it was huge, right? And I knew that it was the right decision. I just needed to do it. And so I then worked as a locum, middle grade, for about 3 years. And essentially I was working, as I view, semi-retired. I literally worked about 1.5 sessions a week for 3 years. And I went and built up a property business and did various different things and had a great time. But eventually I got a little bit bored, and I needed the problem-solving aspect of clinical medicine. I really liked that, and the sort of speaking to patients and the job satisfaction. All that stuff brought me back in, and that's why I ended up doing the GP training. And I'm so glad I did, because it really just flicks all these different switches in my brain that makes me happy. And if I'm happy doing my job, I'm more likely to do a good job. I'm more likely to care about my patients and have empathy for them. And I'm more likely to enjoy what I do outside of my work. And I just think at no point is any of this not connected. You know, all the skills that I got as an entrepreneur, I got from pretty much learning how to be a doctor. I've just applied them in a slightly different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny how the overlap, because obviously when you do some research and they say like, do sales and you need to do this, and you're like, hang on a second, all the sales stuff that I've read is just active listening. And it's like, I've done a whole exam on consultation skills, and there is the similarities are, it's disgustingly similar. It's sort of like, okay, so I've got to show that I've actively listened to my client. I've got to respond back to them. I've got to pick up on cues. I've got to find their pressure points. And like, so you're telling me I've got to take basically a history and try and then suggest a management plan, which, whereas before maybe a medication, now it's a product that I know I have that will suit them. And it's just like, hang on a second, this is the same. So yeah, and I completely agree. Like, I do not want to quit my job. I absolutely love seeing patients. The patients are, bring me so much joy in terms of, them coming back. I've been there at the practice now, it'll be 4 years in August. And it's just amazing. The patients are amazing. The staff are amazing. And then it's interesting when you push into the entrepreneurial space and they're talking about building up your team. What does your team look like? And building a culture. And you think, okay, I'm going to take all of these elements and try and highlight, try and just nudge things in the right direction at work. And so it's sort of like, so it's worthwhile. And I think actually if it's the state of play that, I would not recommend to a GP trainee to do solid 8-10 sessions in a GP practice. I think they will burn out. Yeah. But actually sort of like, I do say to them, do 6-7 sessions and do something else. Whereas actually I think a couple of years back, that something else would be similar to you said, do a bit of out of hours, do something else. Yeah. Whereas actually I think there's a growing place, and what we're finding is there's a growing place of like, well, why can't you do a day a week or 2 days of something entrepreneurial, like that's related to medicine by all means, because that's where your strengths are, but why don't you take the next step?
It doesn't have to necessarily even be related to medicine.
Absolutely.
There's so many different things that you can be, have any sort of side hustle or something. It doesn't really, it could just be knitting on YouTube. I think we've talked about that before. Do you know what I mean?
There'll be some big knitting YouTube channels.
I'm sure there is. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing. It's about kind of having some other, I think, creative outlet, because doing just the clinical medicine can be very, very hard work very quickly.
Absolutely.
And you've got to do this for decades, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, NHS pension I can't get until I'm 68, something like that. So it's sort of like, do I want to work until I'm 68? Probably not. But actually and I think with all of these, it's a case of, yes, you can make these decisions, whatever they are, in terms of like, yes, I want to retire early, yes, I want to send my kids to private school. But actually, you've got to follow that up in terms of like, well, I'm not expecting the world to just suddenly pay a GP practice more so I can afford what I want to do. It's like, no, I've got to put the effort in to find where this cash is going to come from, and what does that look like? So
the phrase "mind your own business" comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly.
No pun intended. But that's exactly the point, right? You actually have to physically go and put some effort in to actually create these things. And I don't think it's a big leap to be an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial as a medically trained person. I don't think that's a difficult leap. You've just got to sometimes get the right the right sort of dominoes in order so that it falls into place quite easily. And it takes a bit of time. Like, none of this happens in 5 minutes. You've been doing YouTubing for years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been doing entrepreneurial things for well over 10 years now, and it might seem like it's possible to just suddenly start a private clinic. I started a month after I was CCT'd, but the reality is that I actually started planning it a year or so beforehand. So it didn't just happen in 5 minutes. It happened over a long period of time, and then it created. But it's knowing the process and knowing how to get there.
Absolutely.
And then basically just working out how to speed that up is quite valuable, really, isn't it? 'Cause
absolutely.
once you can speed it up, you can do a lot of things. Very quickly.
And it's what's, so YouTube wise, like set up this channel back 8 years ago, really took it, and I've been off and on with it just to reflect life. And then you think, well, in the past probably 18 months, took it a bit more seriously, and then really doubled down on it about a year ago. Literal years of effort and consistency to sort of just slowly build this up. I think really from our point of view, we were just having a brief chat about wins of the week, and we've got some early nubs of some really positive things that are coming out, and you'll hopefully see on the channel, that are just showing what's been possible. But as you say, that wasn't possible. It's not just bang, we've just done it. It's no, there's a big foundation behind this. But on the reverse, like, not to put anyone off, far from it, just make a start. I started YouTube when I was a registrar. So when I was ST3, I set up the channel, started recording videos on how-to guides. So I knew how to use the computer system. I set up a couple of how-to guides on the system and just published them. And then they got the views, and then it got people interested. And then it's that and. But you just need to start, whatever it is.
If you don't start, you get nothing. Like, absolutely. Ultimately. And it's only by starting you kind of realise what to do next. Unless you can find somebody who's already got there and ask them how did they do it so that you can get there quicker. The reality is that you have to kind of almost fall over it, and it's not a linear process, is it? It's very much a sort of
all over the way.
If you know what I mean by that.
No, I know what you mean, because it's sort of and it's one of those of like the biggest. I see people hesitate, like, oh, I don't know everything about YouTube. It's like, nor do I. Like, I'm getting her on the channel. I've helped a very, very early creator out and given her my tips and tricks, and then she's had a viral video just explode on her channel. So I sort of, it wasn't official coaching, but sort of like just a bit of back and forth on LinkedIn. I'd review her video, say like, if I was you, I'd do this, this and this, but overall keep it up, you're doing really well. And then she did one video which was amazing. She went from, I think she was about 100, it was 95 subscribers, 95 subscribers, probably about 70, 80 watch time hours. That's sort of very, very sort of like very respectable considering where she got to. And then this video exploded. She's now pushing 2,000 subscribers. She'll be well over the 4,000 watch time hours you're needing for monetization. But she started, and like you rewind, and that was only this year. So she's sort of clearly done a lot of work. I've nudged her as best as I can. She's clearly got some other help as well on the way. Getting her on the channel, which I'm very, very excited about. So you can go and check her channel out. So that's Wise Women's Wellbeing by Dr. Ruth. And yeah, I've done actually a video on this saying it will blow up in 2025. And I was like, I was right and wrong. I was sort of like, I was expecting it by the end of 25. I was like, nope. About 2 weeks after I dropped the video, it's like, done.
Which
anyway.
proves, right, it's not a linear process. There's no sort of, if you do this, you get to this point, you get to this point, you get to this point. It's very much a case of you got to start, and sometimes you got to throw stuff out and see what sticks, and then go from that. I'm very much in the consider myself an entrepreneur who just happens to be a doctor camp, and I have a good appreciation of work-life energy now, rather than work-life balance. I think that's a nicer tagline for GP work, for other things, is whatever you're doing, really get a good work-life energy rather than work-life balance, and things feel a lot happier.
Excellent. Well, I think that's what I would say. If you're watching this and got this far, thank you. What do you think? Have you got work-life balance? Have you got work-life energy? Have you got it right, regardless of what it is and what brings you energy, whether it's being entrepreneurial, painting, walking, playing with the kids, playing trains? Yes, play trains. And then see what they're please comment
Have
below.
you got any other ideas? Have we missed something? Because
Oh, yeah.
If you've got some other way of doing it, we'd love to hear that as well.
Absolutely. We'll get you on the channel and interview you
Yeah.
and see what you think on work-life energy. So please tell us. So,
Grand.
Thank you for
Thanks
watching.
very much.
Yes.